And welcome to Off the Cuff, and today my guest is Joyce Dixson-Haskett. She is a clinical social worker and a therapist with Pathways to Christian Counseling Center. Welcome to the show.
Thank you,
you have such a remarkable story, a very emotional one and a very inspirational one, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Joyce, first of all, you're a clinical social worker and therapist,
Yes.
and you graduated from the University of Michigan.
Yes.
But not sort of in the sort of traditional,
That would be correct.
customary way. So tell us about how you ended up with this particular degree, which will walk us into your story.
Well, actually, I was incarcerated at the time, and we had done a lot of fighting in prison for rights of women because they weren't able to go to school. And after a 12-year fight, the women won the right to higher education. And I was one of 3 women selected to participate in a pilot program with the University of Michigan, undergrad. I was the first woman to graduate from Michigan while behind bars. Go Blue. And
they were very instrumental in the fact that you're sitting with me here today
Yes.
as well.
yes,
So, given that history, you were incarcerated.
yes.
And we need to know, and the audience, of course, would like to know how you got here today. But first of all, why were you incarcerated, and what was that experience? I know it'll be painful, but I actually saw Joyce speak about this about a couple of weeks ago, and I was very touched and emotionally moved, and yet inspired, completely inspired at the same time. So, tell us about where you were and how you ended up in this particular lifestyle.
All right. Actually, I was trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I think most people believe that trafficking actually starts the day you have that first encounter with the person paying you for the sex. You know, I don't think it starts then. I think it starts years before. For me,
Now you were definitely human trafficking.
Yes.
Trafficking. It was a
Trafficked.
case of human trafficking, and you were human trafficked, which is a huge situation, and we've talked about it on the show before. And just doing some research about this, it is so prevalent and under our noses and in our neighborhoods.
Yes.
And unless you know how to actually spot it, it's very, very, very difficult. So how old were you when this happened to you?
in my early 20s.
Early 20s.
My early 20s.
And so you met the perpetrator, I'm going to call him.
Yes.
I would call him another name, but this is family TV. So you met the perpetrator in your 20s.
Yeah.
So tell us about that encounter.
Well, I met him at a time when I was so vulnerable, needed validation, looking for someone to love me. And we find that so often with so many of our young girls.
Sure.
And I think that there are a lot of good parents, and parents think that their children should automatically know that they love them and they validate them, but they don't. And they need to be validated. They need to be told that they're loved. They need to be told that they can do anything. I was always a person who was looking for that. Never got it until one day I met him. I thought that it was my first time meeting him, but he had been watching me for a long time.
Sure.
And that's what they do. They're very good at what they do. And
So they find out what your vulnerabilities
Oh, yes.
are, what your habits are, and then they sort of speak to that.
oh yes, and here he is, and he pulls up in his big car, and girls and money, and oh boy, he was exciting. And took me to dinner and took me to those places I ordinarily wouldn't be able to go, and spent a lot of money on me, bought me clothes, bought me shoes, all these kinds of nice things, nice purses. And I thought I was in seventh heaven. This man loved me.
Somebody was paying attention
Oh,
to you.
yes. And he not just paying attention,
But giving
making
you things
me feel like
special.
I was, yes, the most special person in the world. And at the time, he was also taking my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather, liquor, money. You know,
Oh.
they loved him. So
this was a family kind of affair where he
Oh, yeah.
really got intertwined into your
yes,
your
that's-
environment.
Yes, that's how they can, it makes it easier to control
Sure,
you
Sure.
when the family's on his side. And so, and I had 2 small children at the time. So he's in love, I'm in love. Oh, it's wonderful. You know, the family's loving him. He's good to the family. Next thing you know, the honeymoon was over. And I found myself getting knocked down for saying things like, I thought, you thought.
You don't have a right to think.
Who told you to think? And my name stopped being Joyce and it was that other name. And all of a sudden, my whole world was turned upside down. I would show up at my mother's house all beat up, and it would always be, well, Joyce, what do you keep doing to this man to make him do these things to you? Or if you leave him, what about us? He's good to us. That was my support system. And while they were over there loving him, he would say things to me like, go ahead and leave. You'll come to your mama's funeral. Or go ahead and leave and I'll have those, well, he called them other names, but I'll have, speaking of my 2 sons, I'll have them turned out in a week. And so I am
He
just...
controlled you with fear.
Yes, just totally dumbfounded here. So next thing you know, appointments were being made for me in hotels to meet strange men. Then I'd get beaten if I didn't go. I didn't want to go. I didn't know what I was doing. So there was always a beating to establish order. And, what bothers me so often is when people ask the most stupid question, why didn't you just leave? It's
And
not
we know
that
how
easy.
difficult that is.
Yes. And sometimes, you know, I could go across the state and I'd come back voluntarily. Not so much because of what I thought he'd do to me, because you learn after a while that he's only going to beat me so much because I have to work. But it's the threat against your children, your family, the people you love. And you know those threats have been made by someone who could easily carry them out with no remorse. And I found myself in these places, and it was terrible. Again, I think people like to think that it's easier for them to think that, oh, you know, it's just a prostitute and she's going to turn a trick with a date, and they just go in and introduce themselves and have nice casual sex, and he pays her and she leaves and everybody's happy. It's not that way. It's horrible. It probably one of the most humiliating and devastating and degrading kinds of things that can happen to you, because you have no control over what someone else is doing to you. Sometimes 2, 3 men.
But you triumphed while you're telling the
Yeah.
story. Don't ever forget where you're sitting right now.
You do what you need to do, and you dissociate, and you try and take yourself away from that place, and you want it to be over, and hopefully you're going to get out safely, and you have to get out with what you are supposed to, the amount of money that you're supposed to have. You better have all that or you're going to get beaten again. So it was just awful. I remember once I was the entertainment, and I was beaten with pool sticks and beaten just literally to unconsciousness. And the guy was saying, you know, you have to kill her. So casually, you have to kill her. You can't take her to the hospital because, oh, they're going to ask too many questions. So I'm like, Lord God, please don't let somebody read to my children that they found their mother naked, dead, face down in a ditch. And he beat me so badly that when it was over, he didn't kill me. Instead, they wrapped me up in a sheet like a mummy, threw me in the back seat of a car, took me to a very prominent hospital in Detroit, threw me on the back dock. I was on the back dock for about 3 hours. A maintenance man found me. I was in the hospital for 13 days. They asked me one time what happened, and I wouldn't tell. Nobody asked again. And
in the 13 days, nobody wanted to know how you ended up there and what happened?
No, they asked once. And it's easier, because I think somewhere people think that, well, if I keep asking her, and if she gives me an answer, then that means I'm responsible for doing something. People don't want to get their hands dirty that way. So they justify not doing anything by saying, oh, that's the life she chose. So it must be what she wants to do. So whatever happened to her, that's par for the course. And when my 13 days were up and it was time for me to be released, they released me to the perpetrator.
He came and got you.
Yes. And that's usually the way it is with so many of the girls. If they're in the hospital, or they love the emergency room because it's always so busy. Nobody has time to ask questions. Get them in, get them out. So.
And you were actually afraid to say anything because of your family as well.
Oh, yes. So, you know, I didn't want to die. I didn't want to be beaten either anymore, but I didn't want anything to happen to my children. You're just stuck. And you have no power because you have no control. You have no real identity. When I went to the hospital, I had no identification, no driver's license, you have no birth certificate, none of that stuff. All that stuff is taken away from you because you're anonymous and you're not a person anymore, you're only property to be sold. It's amazing. You go to the store and you buy a bottle of water, you drink the water, you consume the product, it's gone. It's empty. But a person, you sell over and over and over and over and over and over and over, sometimes 10, 15 times a night, because you're a product. So I had gotten to a place in my own heart where I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't do it. You know, if he didn't kill me, I was going to get killed out there. And so I decided that the only way for me to get out of this was to kill him. I had never been in trouble, ever. Had never hurt anybody, had never wanted to hurt anybody. But I decided that I was going to kill him. You know, I'm out in the streets every night. You can get a gun anywhere. Out one night, got a gun, took it back, hid it in an upstairs bathroom that he never used.
But this man had total control of your body, your mind, your soul. Well, maybe nobody can control your soul, but controlled you with fear. And
your will takes your will.
Absolutely, takes your will away, and threatened your family, your sons, your mother, your father, everyone that was near and dear to you. And basically, it was either you were going to die or you had to do something to protect yourself.
Yes, because there was no way I was just going to walk out of there. And I wasn't a drug user. I had no tracks or anything like that. So he was able to get a good price for me. And there was no way he was letting me go. You run away, they find you. And then too, You don't wound a person like this. You don't shoot them in the arm or in the leg as a warning to leave you alone. They hunt you down and make an example out of you. So I mustered up the courage to do it. But it's amazing because when I got ready to do it, I was afraid, but I wasn't afraid for the reasons most people would think I was afraid. I was afraid of things like, what if the gun doesn't go off? Or what if he sees it? Or what if I don't get a shot off? And I waited for my moment, jumped up, looked at him once, shot him. He lay there and he died. I thought something was wrong with me because I didn't go to pieces. I didn't panic. I felt safe. Found the keys, got dressed, got myself out of there, left town, came back 2 weeks later, turned myself in, went to jail. That was the best sleep I had had and I don't know when. I didn't know anything about the law. My trial came. I had a bench trial, which was crazy. That's where you don't have a jury, and the attorney said, oh, the judge already knows what kind of man he is, and it'll be too hard to try and convince a jury, and we don't want people to know what kind of activities you were involved in because that'll make you look worse. But I'll make sure that the judge knows what kind of man he was. So I really had no defense. And they made him look like the victim. And I was a cold-blooded killer.
You told me that during your bench trial, which I mean, I would definitely assume, and I think maybe you were very young at the time, but a jury trial, which makes so much sense.
I didn't know.
To have all those facts come out and know that even though it was something that you had thought of prior to, it was a matter of your life, of your existence, and of the fear of everyone else around you being murdered from this individual. So that would have been something that should have came out, but unfortunately you had a bench trial, which means it's really just a judge, and none of your peers to hear your story.
Nobody. And there wasn't even one witness for me. This attorney, boy, he really, oof. But anyway, when it was over, the judge found me guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced me to spend the rest of my natural life in prison.
Without parole.
Without parole. Then my folks were, oh, my baby, oh, it was too late. I was on my way to the penitentiary. And
there was no appeals during that particular time?
I won 5 appeals. 5. And they were all overturned by the Michigan Supreme Court. 5. So, but what had me so conflicted was, and I guess it's par for the course because all my life it's always been about identity, some confusion about who I am, who I could be, and even in that, because in my heart I was a good person. I wasn't a killer, but I killed. And I wasn't a murderer, but I murdered. Because it was premeditated. I thought about it, before it happened. So now who am I really? Who will I ever be able to become? The judge says I'll die in prison. So I went to prison. And I decided that I was going to learn how to be an advocate for women and their children. And I learned how to fight. I had to do something because I had no out date. There was nothing, there was no piece of paper for me to look at to say, oh, I do this many years and then I'm up for parole here and I could probably go home here. I didn't have that. So I had to find something to grab hold of to keep me moving. I had to find hope. I had to look for it. That was the only thing that kept me going. And I wasn't able to do anything for myself, but I was helping other women, and I was helping their children, even though there wasn't anything I could do for my own children. I was helping somebody else's. So it kept me going. And I was there for 17 years. And then all of a sudden, I was back in court.
But during that 17 years, you advocated for women.
Yes.
You advocated for the right for women to actually get an education that were incarcerated, which, as we spoke about earlier, it makes so much sense to be able to give them an opportunity to, you know, be part of society through education and through that process. So that was something that you were very instrumental in creating, and also it was something that you took advantage of at that point as well while you were incarcerated.
Yes, and to see women feeling worthy,
productive,
and they were going to school, and they were in junior college, and they started to walk taller, feel better about themselves, and I always wanted to build on that. There is no reason for any woman anywhere to walk around and feel like she is not worthy enough to hold her head up and look at anybody. I walked like that for a long time because you're afraid that someone's going to really see you. They're going to see everything you've done. They're going to see who you really are. They're going to see the guilt. The guilt says, this is what I did. The shame says, this is who I am. So you're always afraid that someone is going to look past the guilt, and they're going to look into the shame. They're going to really see who you are. So you hide. I don't do that anymore. I don't do it anymore.
Not. When I look at you, I see someone who's inspirational, someone who's strong, and someone who used that pain and those experiences to do good for herself and to do good for others, and who is sitting here.
Because you are so amazing.
No. You are the one that's inspired me ever since I met you that day. And you're here, and you have a master's degree.
Yes.
People who aren't in jail, it's hard to get a master's degree. So tell us about that. I mean, you said you worked 12 years to get that opportunity for other women, and you enrolled yourself as well, and that was through the University of Michigan.
Well, this is how it happened. It's just amazing.
Yes.
During the course of working on the educational programs and working with the other attorneys to help the women get into junior college, a pilot program was launched through a couple of professors with the University of Michigan. So three women, incarcerated women, were selected to be a part of that pilot program. And I'm proud to say I was the first woman to ever graduate from the University of Michigan while behind bars. And
that's historic.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
It's amazing.
I love Michigan. Go blue.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and miraculously, I get back to court after 17 years. I get to court. Every professor I'd ever had from Michigan was there. Every single one was in the courtroom. Every teaching assistant I'd ever had was in the courtroom. Do you know how hard it is to get a teaching assistant anywhere?
Much less a whole group of them. So that's a testament.
And they were there. And they told the judge that should I be released, they had a spot for me in the master's program in Michigan and in the School of Social Work. And all I remembered hearing that judge say was, Joyce Dixon, have a good life. Oh.
Did you find out who you were that day?
No,
No.
not that day.
But you started.
Yes, I was afraid now. Oh my goodness, how do I do this? Can I do this? And I learned how to keep one foot in front of the other one. Just keep moving forward. And I learned that it's a decision. You just have to decide, I am going to do this.
Right.
And not let fear of failure immobilize you. So.
And now, my dear, you help others with, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things here that you deal with. You deal with individuals that have substance abuse, sexual addiction, self-esteem problems, behavioral issues. You deal with young, medium,
young, old, yes,
alike. And you are a life coach. So looking through your entire life's experience and getting to where you are right now, a very confident, beautiful, energetic, inspirational woman that has just really accomplished so much more than anyone without those challenges, many without those challenges can accomplish. So who are you today?
I am victory.
Yes. Yes, I like that. Definitely. Victory and triumph.
Yes. Yes, and you can do it. You can do it. Just believe that you can. And there's a quote, I don't know who said the quote, but it says, go as far as you can see, and once you get there, you'll be able to see some more.
Absolutely.
Just keep it moving.
Keep it moving. Joyce, for the individuals that get caught into the situation that you got caught into, these young women, young girls, what would be your advice?
To the young girls, or to the parents of the young girls, or to the community? Human trafficking is not something that is across the water. It's around the corner. It's in your backyard. It's your neighbor's house. If I knew then what I know now, and I had daughters, they'd never be at a sleepover, ever. You may know the person whose house you're sending your kid to, but you don't know their friends. You don't know their relatives. I would be in my child's business. Social media is a breeding ground for victims. You never know who you're talking to. Girls shouldn't, I don't think young girls today should be traveling anywhere by themselves. I think they should be in groups because there's always someone watching. Today, the recruiters, they're getting even wiser too. Now they have other young kids recruiting other kids. While you're watching for the strange man to come up and try and talk to you or abduct you, what you're not paying attention to are the young friends who invite you over to their house or wherever. They get you over there and you find yourself in a really bad situation. And this is what happens. They go get a little drink. It could even be a soda or something. Get a soda, they put something in their drink, then they photograph them naked, videotape them naked, threaten to show the video to their family or put it on social media.
And there's the control aspect.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Just have to be very cognizant out there.
Yes.
Watch the people that our kids associate with, especially young girls.
Yes, and validate them.
Validate them. Validate.
Yes.
Love our children and let them know that every day.
Yes.
Joyce, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being who you are. Always keep that head held high and keep doing what you're doing because you're making a huge difference for everyone.
Oh, thank you.
And you are loved.
Thank
you so much. And thank you all for joining us.